Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. So it's a follow-up from the last one in terms of diagnosing issues using the OBD port. I've actually got an engine management light on at the moment in the Mini F56. Not quite sure what it is just yet. So in the last video I was showing you how to read the OBD scanner. So I'll put it up on the screen now, the actual warning I'm getting, but it's a P0036, which is the O2 heater control circuit bank 1. Sensor number 2. So what I've done, I've obviously got that, so straight away turn the engine off so we don't do any further damage to the car. Wasn't quite sure what that was. After a bit of googling and speaking to Mills's Autos, what that actually is the secondary O2 sensor in the catalytic converter. So it's the one, if you think about your cat, there's a sensor pre-cat and a post-cat sensor. So it's the post-cat is number 2. So that's the one where it checks the emissions after exhaust gases has left the engine and gone through the catalytic converter. It measures to check that the emissions are the correct level. Now this is picking up high emissions. Well, obviously the cat's not there in my car, so therefore the emissions are going to be higher. So it's reading a high one, number 1. That would, on a normal car, put an engine management light on. However, because mine's actually tuned from Param Automotive, I don't actually get an engine management light for those emissions being higher. But what looks to have happened is there's some sort of damage to the sensor on mine, which is what that fault, and the fact it's talking about the circuit bank is the fact that for some reason there's a fault with the sensor. It can't tell you why there's a fault or what's caused it, so it could be a wiring issue. So the wiring from the sensor itself to the harness, because there's a little plug after a bit of wire about this long, could be damaged. So I could lift the bonnet and actually see that one of those cables are damaged, or the sensor just could have gone faulty. Now there could be many reasons from what I'm reading online. It could be purely the additional heat, because there's hot gases that would normally be slightly cooled by hitting the catalytic converter that are now directly hitting the O2 sensor. The other thing it could be is some water could have got into the sensor. I'm really not going to know what's actually damaged the sensor. What I'm going to do today is cover off the fact. I'll show you the engine management light code that I got up on the screen again now. So it's P0036 that's helped me work out that that's the issue. Now, the simplest and quickest fix, rather than me trying to faff in the engine bay and try and fix it, is I've picked up a sensor off eBay, brand new one. I'll put a link in the description and show the details on the screen now of the part numbers, etc. Really not that expensive. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's about 30-40 quid, something like that for a sensor. So I'm going to remove the old one out the cat, hopefully not having to remove too much of the engine bay to be able to get to it. And then what we'll do is show you the process of fitting that sensor. And what we'll do now, we'll switch to the external camera. We're going to try something a bit different for this install. So normally I use a fixed camera position. I'm going to try mounting the camera on a little head strap and show you a sort of a my eye view. So hopefully that works really well. Give me a bit of feedback in terms of what you guys think of the camera angles in this video. So it's going to be slightly different to some of my others. Hopefully you get a little bit closer into the action of what I'm doing, and you'll be able to see close up the parts I'm having to remove, how to remove them, and tools that we're using. So let's jump into the engine bay and show you removing that sensor. Okay. So we're into the engine bay. One of the first jobs we're going to need to do is just pop off this cover now. Just pull it from the front and the back corners there. And you'll see there's just little rubbers on the back of here, and they just go into these little nodules there. We've got a little spider in the engine bay. Then what we need to do is pop off your windscreen wipers, because unfortunately some of this plastic cowling is going to come off to get in the way. Because if you look, you might not be able to see, right in there is where the sensor is, so we're going to need to be able to get to it. So we're going to need to remove some of this piping, and to get this out, this plastic unfortunately is going to need to come out the way. So what we're going to do, pop these caps off, they twist off. If not, we'll get some little grips on. Oh, there we go, get those off. We'll spray a little WD-40 on there and leave it for a couple of minutes to soak in before we pull off the windscreen wipers. Now, a good tip that I've seen is that when you're removing windscreen wipers is to actually tape off, put a little tape marker on your window so you know where to put these back, because when you mount them on the car, you could technically start them off and twist them any location. So I've actually taken a photograph of this so I know exactly where they finish in the stop position. So it's up to you. I'm going to get some WD-40 now and spray that on. Okay, so we've left it a few minutes now for this to soak in. Alright, so that was easy. And mine have been off anyway previously because of fitting the decat. So don't forget, nuts and bolts straight into your metal tray. Let's see if we can get in. I need to drop the extension off. There we go, that's off. That's your second bolt. In our tray. We should give them a little bit of a wiggle. There we go. And it helped if I just put my hand down there, lifted that up. So we need to lift those out the way. Okay, and we do the exact same on that. So push that down and lift him up. Let's put him down on the floor. Okay, so we need to remove the weather strip. So that's nice and easy. Just peel that off all the way along. Put that down. Then, looking at the cowling, we need to get this out the way. Now there's a few different clips. So first of all, we've got these, which you can undo, finger, and stick them in your tray. You don't want to lose those. Same again at this end. Then it looks like we've got to remove these here potentially, because they might be locking in wherever this is attached to. So for that we need a big screwdriver. So if we rotate those that way, it looks like I've got one missing, so I think that must have been removed in a previous installation and lost maybe. We've got a metal clip here that's holding in this rubber section, and then again at this end. So you can see straight away a lot of this is starting to get loose. Okay, so the next step in the process is to remove these end panels. So there's one this end, one that end, and again you can see, you might not be able to pick it up on camera, but when you look at it in person, there's a little arrow that says open. What you basically do, when these two arrows are lined up, it's locked. But if you rotate that, that's now unlocked. So rotate it to the left, so the arrow's pointing upwards. That one's already undone. And then you've got this one down here as well. And this panel, because we've removed that earlier as well, lifts straight out. That's another one out. Okay, so let's go to the other end. So let's remove our tools out the way. And then it should be a very similar process. 1, 2, 3, and out that comes as well. And what these are, and that's a little disconnected, so we've got to make sure when we put this back together that that's properly clipped in. These are the drains that feed the water down from the cowling down out the underside of the car, so we need to make sure that's connected properly when we put this back together, and we'll match it to the other side. Okay, so we've removed all the clips that hold this in. So we've done these down here, took the wipers off. So now, from what I understand, this is hooked underneath the windscreen, and then obviously we've got to clear these as well to be able to remove that. So I've started this end, so if I come just to show you what I was doing, is you can see there, just pulled it down and away, and we're going to come and try and work our way across. You can see that's definitely away from the windscreen there. It's again, there you go, pull that out. Again, hopefully this new camera view is useful for you. You're actually up close and you can see what I can see. And then that's that panel off. Let's pull that through, and that's out. Okay, so the next job is, because you want to get this out, this is in the way, so we need to drop this out. This is easy enough to get out. Drop the weather seal off at that end. You see there's a little 8mm bolt here. So let's get that 8mm out. And then either end we've got some little pop clips, so again they're super easy. Just use one of these little tools, or if not, flat-headed screwdriver if you don't have one of these. Pop that out. Make sure to get that bit out as well so you don't lose it. There's another one down here, it's halfway out anyway. That's that piece of trim removed. Okay, so that's that out. Then in here, just there, if you can see, one there, and right back there, there's 3 T30 Torx bit bolts that go through and hold that plastic in place. So it holds all this in place. So it's one of these. Now you need it on an extension. Now from what I understand, I've not removed these before, but there is a retainer on the back, some sort of spring retainer to stop them dropping down the back of the engine. So from what I understand, you literally undo these. Now I wonder exactly how this works. I've not, again, as I say, I've not done it before, so I'm going off instructions I've seen online. Let's undo it by hand, the last bit, because I don't want that dropping, just in case I've misread it. Okay, so I felt that clip go. I think the bolt itself must be attached to this plastic trim, so you just undo it enough. So we'll go in straight over the top of this, and again undo it, and you will feel the spring go. It's a really odd thing to say, but you'll feel when you've got to the end of that particular bolt. And I'm assuming what it does, it just makes sure it remains attached to the plastic trim so you don't drop it down the back of the engine bay. Then we've got a third one tucked in right down here. Now I'm going to need an even longer extension. Just use this one. Go right in there at the back. Probably really difficult to see on camera, but it's literally just under here. You can't see it, it's the only sort of silver bolt in there. Now it's a bit tricky to line up your Torx bit, but once you've got it in, you'll feel, and then just get that undone. And it doesn't take a lot to get these undone. Right, there's the clip. I don't know whether I got that on this middle one, so let's go back and just undo that. There you go. I don't know whether you heard, there's like a little clunk when that undoes. So there's definitely more movement in it. One thing it looks like is holding it in place is the battery cover as well. So again, let's do a thorough job. We don't want to try and stress any of the plastics, so let's drop those 8mm out as well. So this is a really easy bit to remove. So there's 3 8mm bolts on this one. One, remember to always put them in your tray, you don't lose them. Unfortunately, this got it. 2. This engine bay is very cramped on a Mini F56. So I don't know whether it's because of all the bigger engine, because it's a 2-litre engine compared to the previous 1.6, or whether it's because of the extra pedestrian safety features of the car. But the engine just seems to be crammed in, so there's not a lot of room. There never is anywhere on a Mini. It seems even less on an F56, hence why all this plastic covering has to come off just to get to the sensors. Let's get that out of the way. And what it might be worth you doing is, while you've got this all off, is just making sure these gutters, which they aren't on mine, are in place and clear. Make sure they're not blocked with any debris. So let's take a look at this now. Okay, so once you've undone those 3 bolts across here, we've took this panel out and this has gone. This should pull away and it's starting to come up. So one thing I've noticed, these cables come through this panel, and that looks like this lifts off to let those cables free, because I don't want to disconnect them, don't know what they're for. So it's another Torx bit, so let's grab that from the tool set. T20 maybe? Let's have a look. T20. So let's get that out again, being careful not to lose any of these bolts as they come out. It's a little screw, put it in your tray. And then how does this remove? Again, this is the first time I took it apart, so just being gentle, make sure I don't break anything. There we go. Okay, there's two little clips there and there, that comes off. Then those cables are free, and out this comes. So if we look, those bolts are actually still there. Okay, so this little plastic retainer here stops them from dropping out. That's really handy to know that they're on the back of there, so you don't lose them in the engine bay. So let's get those two bits of plastic out and put them down safely on the floor. Okay, so a bit of an update in terms of where we are. So the sensor is right just through this hole here, and what this removing all this will do will get us enough space to get in with all of our tools from above, and also the fact this thing's in the way. Now I'm wondering whether, now we've got this out the way, we can get to the sensor without removing this. So I can see this is the wiring, so this is where the sensor comes, this grey cable, I think. So we've got to get up this high first of all, so that's interesting. Whether this cabling will be able to squeeze through, or whether we might just have to drop, and I think it's only this Torx bolt here out to be able to maneuver this a little bit to get the cabling through. So what I'm going to do is have a play off camera, see if we can get that out without having to remove any of this. That'll be a bonus if we do. Okay, so just having a bit of an explore around, I think I should be able to get down to get the sensor out without having to remove this. But what I am looking at is, this is the sensor cabling just here, so this grey cable coming up goes down to the grey cable down there. I don't think I'm going to be able to maneuver this block through here without at least undoing this. So it's a Torx 30. If you look just here, there's a Torx screw just holding hopefully this pipe in place. So I've not had this off for a while, so I can't remember exactly how much room for manoeuvre we'll get, so let's have a look. So get that out. Right, yeah, there's enough wiggle room there. Okay, so we're going to look at this now. So this is the wiring that goes down that we need to get out. So first of all, pop that out of that clip, and then what we need to do, pull that out. Then if we get a little flathead screwdriver, so just something like this, and there is a little clip just here, push that down and that grey clip comes out. Now be careful not to lose that, put them in your tray. Then we should be able to then see this here, pinch down on that and pull out. So there's a little tab there, just disconnect that, and that's your cable for the sensor disconnected. Now the sensor goes down to there, so we've disconnected this. This should give us just enough wiggle room to be able to pull that cable through. I think it's clipped in yet, just underneath the airbox. If we pull that through, and just remember sort of roughly where this goes, there you go, and come out and round. So I'll get some light in here so you can see, but it's basically right down in there. Okay, so let's take a look now. If you can see from the air pipe coming down, you can see right down there, you can see just down there is that grey cable coming out of behind this heat shield, and that is the sensor that we're looking to remove. So it is deep in there. So what I'm going to do is show you the tool that I've purchased to remove that, so that you can buy the same, and you should be able to now remove that without having to remove anything else. Fingers crossed. Okay, so exactly what have we got to fit? So we've got, first of all, this is the replacement O2 sensor. So I'll put a link in the description down below and on the screen now to where I purchased that from. That was from eBay. Next, we've got the O2 sensor spacer. So you can see there, it's just a simple spacer, and all that does is that screws into there, then that screws into the engine, well, into the downpipe, should I say, and spaces that out. So I explained the purpose of that earlier. Then we've got the 1/2 inch drive 22mm socket, and it's I've got the 150mm length one because that sensor is sort of right into the heat shields and everything, so to be able to get down and in there, we've got that longer version of that. So if you took all the heat shields and everything off, which would be a much bigger job, you could use a shorter one, but this for me is going to be ideal without having to remove anything. Now it's 1/2 inch, so it can work with my impact gun, etc, so it'd be super easy to get it off, so that's good. The slit in here is so that those cables from the sensor actually slot in there, so you're able to slot this over the top if you didn't. And finally, we've got this extension bar. Now you've probably already got this in your tool set. This is a 10-inch one. The reason I've got this is because there's so much to get past in the engine bay. We need a really long extension lead, and the one in my Halford set wasn't long enough, but luckily I've got this from my impact driver set that we're able to use instead. Okay, so on the screen now you can see the O2 sensor. I'm going to put my socket over the top. You can see I'm going to slot it over the wire, and that's what we've got to do, is just give it a good jiggle about until you can feel it's a little bit tricky, but you basically want to make sure that locks over the top of the sensor. So just how I showed you off the car, it needs to hook over the top, make sure you're not trapping the wire. And then for me, I'm going to use an impact gun because I've got one to hand. You could easily use a breaker bar or just a normal ratchet to get that undone. Bit of WD-40, or run the engine for a minute maybe to get some heat in it if it's stuck, but mine seems pretty simple when I've tried to get it out before, so let's give it a go. So what I'm going to do is actually use an impact gun. You could use a breaker bar. There you go. And watch you don't snag that. Obviously mine's damaged, so I'm not taking too much care, but what you want to do is try and not do what I've done and wind that cable up too much. And out the sensor comes, so you can see. Let's show you a bit of a closer up of that sensor. That's very black, very dirty. So it could be that because it's in the direct line of sight from the heat that's coming through. One of the cables might be damaged. I don't know in terms of the damage on that. But we've got a replacement, so let's get that ready. Okay guys, so I just want to correct something from earlier in the video. So I was talking about using this spacer, and you can do if your decat doesn't already have one. But I've just actually had a closer look at the Scorpion decat I've got, and it actually has an extended part just like this on it already. So the spacer's actually already built in, so I don't need to fit this aftermarket one. Hey ho, you learn as you go along. So that means we can put that straight in. Now if you're going to do it, let's just tighten that up and then just tighten it in as if you would, and all it's doing is extending the threaded section. But for me, I can go straight in with this straight into the downpipe. Okay, so we're just coming to the back of the engine again. This is going to be so difficult to show you and explain as I'm doing it because there's no sight for the camera. But I'm basically going to pass this down into the O2 sensor down and screw it back in exactly where the old one came out, and then tighten it by hand. So let me just get that in and get the first couple of threads on, and then I'll show you tightening it up. Okay, so now we've got this grey cable here at the back. We need to run that basically up through this gap just here. So if I feed that round the back, then there should be enough, and you see that's just poking up through there. We can mess around with where it comes up to after, but let's get the cable actually up. So this is for the new sensor, so that's up and through. So we want it this side, so let's try and feed that if we can, make some space, and feed that the other side of that clip, and then that's through, comes through here and into there. So on the back of the engine here, I can't show you, but there's the other cable for the other sensor and like a spring loaded metal clip. And what you'll be able to do is actually, I don't know whether you can see that on camera, probably not, is basically just feed it in, so it's the same place that it came out of, and there's the other sensor cable that runs through the same spring clip. That's just so that it doesn't drop down. Then we've got the cable through, there's a little hook there for it, and we're ready to reconnect it. So for reconnecting, push that on, so it's all the way on, and then we just need a little grey plastic clip. Pop that back in there, and that's now locked in. Give it a good tug, and remember to clip that in place. So our sensor's in, reconnected. We've got obviously all this to go back on, but there's nothing else that we've actually disconnected electrically, so the engine should now work, and hopefully that fault code's gone. So what I'm going to do is, before I put it all back together, I think it's always good to test the fix that you've done and just make sure it actually works. So we're going to restart the car now, see if the fault code's gone. It might need the code clearing first, so we'll take a look at that as well while we're in there. Okay, so we're in the car now, and you can see the engine management light is still running, or still showing while the engine is running. So what we're going to do is just use our cheap little sensor, OBD2 code reader, sorry, to actually clear the code. And if I remember rightly, on the F56 you can't do it while the engine's running. Yeah, you have to, once you've read the code, turn the ignition on, so press it a couple of times so the engine's not running but the codes are showing. And let's try raising the code from here. Okay, let's start the car again. And if you look now, no engine management light. So we're going to check under the bonnet. We need to get some fuel actually. We're going to check under the bonnet just to check that there's no leaks now that the engine's running, check that we've tightened it correctly, and then we'll refit all the plastic trim. Okay, so we've checked, there's no exhaust leaks, so that was successful. The light's gone off now, so it's obviously getting the right, it's sensing whatever it needs to and sending the signal back to the ECU. So the job now is to basically replace everything that we took off, put it back on. So what I'll do now is show you the process of me putting that back on, and it's literally the reverse of how we started the video. Okay, so the first bit is getting this back into place. So remember, we've got 3 bolts along the back of that. They go into these bits here. So let's slot that over, cables over the top, and get that back in place. Now if you look from above, not sure whether this is capturing on camera, but you can actually line up everything from above, and actually probably start to do them up by hand. Okay, so they're T30, so let's get the T30 bit. We'll get the second extension to make that a bit longer. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll start from the left, get our T30 in, and then start screwing it in by hand till it catches. Got to remember that bolt as well. So let's get the second one in. Let's look at the back. So that's not in the hole as yet. Let's give him a bit of a manoeuvre, and she's in. And again, it's all plastics, so just be gentle. Get it all done up by hand, and then if you need a final tighten, you can use a ratchet. You don't want to use any sort of electrical impact gun or anything on stuff like this. That's one. I think hand tight will be absolutely fine, but you can get a ratchet in there just to finish it off. Then your final one is just down the back here. So again, look from above. This one's not quite in. Let's flex the panel up. And probably should have done this beforehand. There we go. And that's now in. So again, we can come in through here and get that done up by hand. doesn't seem to want to do up. So okay, so we've gone for a longer extension just to get in there and get that done up. So you clearly don't need a breaker bar to do it, but it gives me the extra length to be able to get right into the back there and get that done up. Right, so that's in place. It'll be held down when we get these other panels in. So one thing we need to do is remember this on the air box, or the air, not the air box, sorry, this air feed here. So it was this big long screw, if I remember rightly, going in there. So we'll just go and get the Torx bit for that. Now, okay, so you can see we've just got to tighten this one back up so this air feeds back in place. Start it by hand and then finish it off with the socket. Remember, it's all plastic, so you don't want to go too tight and damage any of it. Next, we've got this little section up here, and that screw goes into there. So we've got this piece of plastic, and I'm trying to think which way it went, so that way up, and the screw section there, two little clips there and there, so clip that in and get your screw in place. And let's just get, this one was a T20, let's get that tight. Okay, so that's the T20 in, so that's that in place, that in place. So it's now all these trims around the side we need to start putting in. Okay, so we've got that panel in place. Next we're going to need to do this one and this one. So let's move our bolts out the way and put them a little bit lower. And we're going to need an 8mm socket and the actual parts themselves. Okay, so first of all, we've got the battery cover. That goes in, and then we've got 1, 2, 3. So these are the little 8mm screws. Right, get them all in loosely first, just to make sure all the holes are lined up, and then give them a final tighten once we've got all 3 in. To get them tight. That stops this rattling. Okay, let's go the other end. Then we've got this same panel. So if this goes, just trying to remember all the different panels, there we go. We've got a pop clip here and a pop clip here. These are these plastic pins, and all you do, push them in and push really firmly on the centre, and that will pop in. Let's go for the next one. Make sure that's in the centre first. Push him in. Then push it all the way down with your thumb. And that's in place. This has a little clip. Clips in there to start the weather strip off. Then we have one last 8mm screw in here. There you go. Okay, so I'm not happy with that connection there, it's a bit loose, so I'm going to get the trim popping tool out, get that off, and then reinsert that. Always go back and correct things if you're not happy with it, it's no point leaving it. So let's pop him out. Oh, we lost him in there. Be careful not to do that and overshoot. So making sure this time pins all the way out, press that panel into place, make sure that pins all the way down when we press that in. There you go, that's better now, it's more secure. It's a bit of a rubbish design with the way that weather strip clips on, but that goes into there. So we've got all these panels all the way across done now. So while we're here, let's take a look at these. So these have popped off. I mean, there's been work on this car previously, So I would expect things like this to happen. It's not a surprise by the looks of it. It just clips. Let's clear some of this debris out. It just clips in here. Okay, so there must be some sort of clip here when you've not got coilovers. Because I've got coilovers, that clip's missing, unless it's under that bolt, but that seems a bit of a weak design. I wonder whether it's that there. So let's put that in place. That's probably why they were loose, because they were knocked out when I was removing them, because they can't clip in place because I've got coilovers in. Let's take the other end, and I bet it's exactly the same. So let's clear some of the debris out. Let's get him clicked back in here, and you can see that lines up again. Similar thing, because we've got coilovers, because I've got BC coilovers, then there's nowhere for that to actually clip to. So we'll make sure when we're putting this panel in place that we don't knock those back out again. Make sure all that water is filtering down there and through and out through the drains. Okay, so the next thing is this piece of trim. So let's slot him up. It's actually quite tricky to do. Let's take him up through there. Right, so first port of call is the fact we know we've got to go over these two lugs for the windscreen wipers, so we know that's a definite place. And then here there's a lip. This top lip goes on top of the glass, and there's a little piece underneath that clips into, like, there's a little gully down the bottom of the windscreen, clips into there. So I'm going to attempt that and see how we get on. Let's first of all line up the rubber bushes. Now this one's a bit tricky, this end. There we go. Line up the bushes, rubber bushes on those, so we know that's in place. Then we need to worry about the bottom of the windscreen next. Okay, so I'm going to come in from this side, see what I can see. Yep, there we go. Didn't sort of hook that in along the bottom of the glass by the looks of it. And this piece of rubber, it's flicking there to fill that gap. Let's go the other end and see how this looks. Yeah, there you go. You can hear it all the way along, just clip into place along the bottom of that windscreen. Make sure that bit of rubber's there. There's a couple of clips and things that we need to get done with a screwdriver. Okay, so if you remember, you need to set these to the unlock position. If I remember rightly, there we go. That first one clipped down and in, and then you rotate that to line up the arrows. And let's see if that one's in place as well. So that's in, that one is not. So undo that. There you go, so lots of movement. Now if we push down and screw at the same time, that's in. So then we've got the washers to go, and also these panels. So let's do the plastic panels first, and then we'll do the washers last. Okay, so it's this panel we'll go for first. So we make sure the drain lines up with the drain. Then pop that up. Make sure we don't trap any of this rubber underneath. Now remember, these should be horizontal, so the arrows, because there's a little arrow here, they should be away from each other as a starting point. And then when we rotate this, it should be arrow to arrow, and that should lock that in place. So again, press, twist, that's in. Now we've made sure we lined up our gutters as well, so our drains for gutters are correct. Then here, there's a little bit of trim, it's a bit of an epoxy clip to be honest, but holds that in place there. We've then got this metal clip that holds this rubber lip to this rubber lip, so we're making sure that's all sealed and covered. So let's go the other end. Similar situation, make sure all the arrows are away. So in this case they're all horizontal, our clips. And again, This raised section here should slot into here, so that's one thing we need to make sure happens for the drains to be working properly. Now that's disconnected. Let's just make sure, there we go, pop that drain in place, rotate that round, rotate all of these clips to lock them in place. Okay, so that one wasn't quite pressed in. We just undo that, doing back up. Let's double check on that one. Done. So they're now all in place. So we've got this one, that's done. We've got the same metal clip here. We just make sure that's off. We can slide that back over again. That's all done and keeps that weather seal tight. Then we've got the screws across the top of here, which are these ones. Now if you need to do them up with a tool, they're a 10mm, but I think finger tight, especially as they're plastic, should be absolutely fine. There's the other 10mm. We did these as well, so they're all clipped in. So in our tray now we've got 2 bolts left, which are the windscreen wipers. So we'll slide those over the top, put them in place, and then we're done. Okay, so we're going to go with putting these on first. So literally, put the bolt there a second. You want to make sure that goes on as straight as it can do. There we go, all the way down. Now if you press it all the way down, it locks it in place because the spline's on the back. What we want to do is get the rotation right of the starting position. So refer back to your tape markings or the photos that you took, just to make sure that goes back in the right place. Then we can do that off. Yeah, remember it's 16mm. Do a bit of an extension bar on that, especially for the other side, but let's do that for now. Okay, and you want to make sure your wiper's back in the place it started. Same again for this side. Now the wipers, from what I can see, aren't sided. They're exactly the same on both sides. So again, put it into its starting position. Start the bolt, and we can always straighten this up. There we go. Get it into its starting position, then we'll do that bolt up as well. And we can test all this as soon as we're done. Just make sure our wipers aren't hitting anything. Hold it in place, lock them in. Now we just need to put those little plastic caps that came off on, and then we're done. So we had these little plastic caps over the bolts to make it look pretty, so you're not seeing that threaded section. Okay, so that's all done. So make sure you clear your tools out the engine bay, and then there's 2 more things that we need to refit: the weather strip and the engine cover itself. So let's get that. So the weather strip couldn't be any easier. Literally, it's got the shape in it of this raised metal section. What you do, clip that into place, make sure it's underneath these end parts so it keeps it sealed. That's that done. Finally, we've got the engine cover, and on this there's some rubber bungs all the way around, and all we're going to do is line those up with the pins on the engine. Use your fingers, work out where those are, and that's in place. Now that's the install completely done, finished. Okay, so that's the install done. Engine management light's gone, which is perfect, exactly what we're expecting to see. So hopefully you found that video useful. If you did, please hit that like button, gives it a thumbs up, and that really helps the channel. If you could then hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell so you get alerts every time we upload new content to the channel. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thread bit, and there's actually little holes on the bottom.